Henri of Artois, Count of Chambord, was disputedly King of France from 2 to 9 August 1830 as Henri V, although he was never officially proclaimed as such. Afterwards, he was the legitimate pretender to the throne of France from 1844 to 1883. Henri was the posthumous son of Charles Ferdinand, Duke of Berry, younger son of Charles X of France, by his wife, Princess Carolina of Naples and Sicily, daughter of King Francis I of the Two Sicilies. As the grandson of the King Charles X of France, Henri was a petit-fils de France. He also was the last legitimate descendant in the male line of Louis XV of France. Birth and youth. He was born on 29 September 1820, in the Pavillon de Marsan, part of the Tuileries Palace, which still survives in the Louvre Palace in Paris. Henri's father, the Duc de Berry, had been assassinated 7 months before his birth. At the actual moment of Henri's birth, no member of the French court was present in the room. This enabled the supporters of Louis-Philippe, Duc d'Orléans, to later claim that Henri was not in fact a French prince. At birth, Henri was given the title of Duc de Bordeaux. Because of his posthumous birth when the senior line of the House of Bourbon appeared about to become extinct, he was given the name Dieudonné. Royalists called him the Miracle Child. On 2 August 1830, in response to the July Revolution, Henri's grandfather, Charles X, abdicated, and 20 minutes later Charles's elder son Louis-Antoine, Duc d'Angoulême, also abdicated in favor of the young Duc de Bordeaux. Charles X urged his cousin, Louis-Philippe of Orléans, as Lieutenant Général du Royaume, to proclaim Henri as Henri V, King of France. But Louis-Philippe ignored him. As a consequence, after 7 days, a period in which legitimist monarchists considered that Henri had been the rightful monarch of France, the National Assembly decreed that the throne should pass to Louis-Philippe, who was proclaimed King of the French on 9 August. Exile. Henri and his family left France and went into exile on 16 August 1830. Still others recognized the July monarchy of Louis-Philippe. With the death of his grandfather in 1836, and of his uncle in 1844, Henri became the genealogically senior claimant to the French throne. His supporters were called Legitimists to distinguish them from the Orléanists, the supporters of the family of Louis-Philippe. Henri, who preferred the courtesy title of Comte de Chambord, continued his claim to the throne throughout the July monarchy of Louis-Philippe. The Second Republic, the Second Empire of Napoleon III, and the Third Republic. In November 1846, the Comte de Chambord married his second cousin Archduchess Maria Theresa of Austria-Est, daughter of Duke Francis IV of Modena and Princess Maria Beatrice of Savoy. Her maternal grandparents were Victor Emmanuel I of Sardinia and Maria Theresa of Austria-Est. The couple had no children. Hope. In the early 1870s, as the Second Empire collapsed following its defeat in the Franco-Prussian War at the Battle of Sedan on 1 September 1870, the Royalists became a majority in the National Assembly. The Orléanists agreed to support the aging Comte de Chambord's claim to the throne, with the expectation that at his childless death he would be succeeded by their own claimant, Philippe d'Orléans, Comte de Paris. Henri was then pretender for both Legitimists and Orléanists, and the restoration of monarchy in France seemed a close possibility. However, Henri insisted that he would accept the crown only on condition that France abandon its tricolour flag and return to the use of the white fleur-de-lis flag. He rejected a compromise, whereby the fleur-de-lis would be the new king's personal standard, and the tricolour would remain the national flag. Defeat. A temporary Third Republic was established, to wait for Henri's death and his replacement by the more liberal Comte de Paris. But by the time this occurred in 1883, public opinion had swung behind the Republic as the form of government which, in the words of the former President Adolphe Thiers, divides us least. Thus, Henri could be mockingly hailed by Republicans such as Georges Clemenceau as the French Washington, the one man without whom the Republic could not have been founded. Henri died on 24 August 1883 at his residence in Frosdorf, Austria, at the age of 62. He was buried in his grandfather Charles X's crypt in the Church of the Franciscan Kostanjevica monastery in Gorizia, then Austria, now in Slovenian city of Nova Gorica. Henri's death left the legitimist line of succession distinctly confused. On one hand, Henri himself had accepted that the head of the Maison de France would be the head of the Orléans line, i.e., the Comte de Paris. This was accepted by many legitimists, and was the default on legal grounds. The only surviving Bourbon line morceau was the Spanish branch, which had renounced its right to inherit the throne of France as a condition of the Treaty of Utrecht. However, many if not most of Henri's supporters, including his widow, chose to disregard his statements and this law, arguing that no one had the right to deny to the senior direct male line male Bourbon to be the head of the Maison de France and thus the legitimate King of France. The renunciation of the Spanish branch is under this interpretation illegitimate and therefore void. Thus these legitimists settled on Juan, Count of Montezon, the Carlist pretender to the Spanish throne, as their claimant to the French crown. His personal property, including the Château de Chambord, was left to his nephew, Robert I, Duke of Parma. Gallery. The Duchess of Berry and Her Children by François Gérard, 1822. The Duchess of Berry and Her Son by François Gérard, 1828. Detail of portrait, c. 1830. Portrait in uniform, 1833. Portrait, c. 1833. Ancestry.